Hello everybody, welcome to part 6 of my C++ beginner tutorial. Today we're going to be covering if statements and how to use them, what they do, and just in general, if statements. So this is a fun topic. This is really where you can start expanding your knowledge of C++ or any programming language, because almost all of them use some kind of if statement. Now to start with here, let's just kind of cover how computers work. A computer can't do anything on its own. It's got no brain. It can't make any kind of decisions. To make a decision, you actually have to tell it how to make that decision. So you have to tell it, hey, compare these two values. And if they do equal what they should, then do something. To think of it in kind of human terms, you would say, if I'm thirsty, I go get water. Or else I sit on the couch and watch TV. Or sit at my computer and program. Now, you need to actually tell the computer how to make that decision. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to make a simple program, and let's just go ahead and start from the beginning, and we're going to make a grading system. So this is a program that'll take your percentage and like a test score, and it will give you whether you passed or failed. Not only that, we can even do letter grades. Let's do letter grades because it's a little more complicated and a little more fun. So let's do float test score, and that's all we need. So let's do cout. So we're printing to the screen. We're going to say enter your test score. That's it. And we'll do cin test score. Now I'm making this a float because you can't have test scores that are floats, right? Like 50.5%. Well, now we just need to do a couple if statements, and the way these work is you type the word if, and it's just like a function. You have double parentheses, and then below it, actually, let's go here. So in these brackets, so you have if, and then in these brackets, it's going to be what you're comparing. So let's say test score. If test score is greater than or equal to, and there's different operations that we can use. Let's cover those real quick. So when you're comparing two variables, you can use greater than, you can use less than, you can use equal to, and notice that there is a double equals here, and that is because you can't just use equals, because if you said if test score equals 100, then you get 100%, because it'll just be setting test score to 100. So we got equals, we got less than or equal to, we got greater than or equal to, and finally we have not equal to. So it's an exclamation point equal. So it's it's simple as that. If you're using a Boolean value, it would say, like, if we wanted to test whether a certain Boolean is equal to true, we can do something like this. But we can also just say in the parentheses, we can just say the Boolean name, and what that's going to do is it's going to check, is this Boolean true, and it's going to say yes. Oh, sorry, I had to get a drink of water there. Now if we wanted to compare whether a Boolean is false, we can just say not Boolean, and then the variable name, and then that'll check if it's false. Now I'm going to go ahead and erase all this, and we're going to start comparing the test scores. Now we're going to say if it's greater than or equal to 100, then you pass, right? You got an A. We can actually do, what is an A, like an 80? So 80, you got an A. Now when you're writing an if statement, you can do something like this and say cout you got an A, right? And then we'll just do end line. Well, this is a functioning if statement. It just needs to be the if statement, then directly underneath it can be one line of code. But this only works if there is exactly one line of code. So if there's like 2 lines of code, you can't do this. And to fix that, you can add your curly braces at the beginning and at the end of the if statement. Now, even with one line of code programs, I like to include the curly braces. I'm not sure why I do. I just feel like it's easier to read. It does take up more lines on the screen, but it is easier to read because you can say the if statement ends right there. So I recommend including those. There's no downside to it. Now let's say we want to do, like, what happens if they enter a number less than 80? Well, we can do another if statement, and we can say if test score is less than 80, and then that'll compare, and we'll say cout you got a B. Well, what this is going to do is there's a problem with this here, and if you can spot it, then awesome. Well, it's going to check whether it's greater than 80, the computer will, and then if it is, it'll print this out. Well, then the computer will check, hey, okay, is it less than 80? Well, it doesn't need to check that because it already checked whether it was greater. So this is a waste of time for the computer because it's got to read this and check it. And it's not so much of a problem with these smaller programs, but with the bigger programs it can be. Now this episode's getting a little long, but let's cover it. So instead of doing that, we can do something a little simpler, and it's known as an else statement. And the way this works is we say else it's less than 80, and this is gonna we can say else, let me copy that so I don't have to retype it. So else this. So if it's this, then it'll run this line of code, and if it's not, no matter what number it is in there, if it's not greater than or equal to 80, it'll say you got a B, which isn't correct. So we'll use another thing called else if statements. And so that'll say else if the test score was less than 80, you got a B. Well, what if you enter 50? Well, the problem there is that 50 is not a B. And if I were to type, the next else if statement and say test score is less than, what is a C, 70%? 70, then we'll cout and say you got a C. Well, the problem here is that if it's less than 70, it's less than 82. So the computer will kind of go through this line. It'll say it didn't check. It'll go through this one if I entered 60, and it'll say, whoa, this is less than 80. I'm going to run this line of code. I'm not even going to bother checking this line of code because this was true. And then I'm going to, end the program. That's it. We're done. So we need to use what's called a combiner operator, I think they're called. And this is just a double and symbol, or a double or. This is or. It's the key that's directly above the backslash, or directly above the enter, and it's just shift backslash, and you get these two symbols. And the way these work is it's and or. So we can check for whether two things are true or whether either or of those things are true. So we can say else if test score is less than 80, or it's equal to 80, for instance, and if it is equal to 80, it'll return true, and if it's less than 80, it'll return true. Or we can say and, so this is and, so both of them need to be true for the statement to pass. We can say so test score is less than 80 and test score is greater than or equal to 70. And then that'll pass, and we just need to do the same thing here. So we can say and test score is greater than or equal to 60. Well, okay, so we got A, B, and C. All we have left is F. So we'll say else if, or we could just say else. If test score is anything other than these, then we can print out the line. And again, just like the if statements, this doesn't even need to be in closing braces. I just like to have them in closing braces because it makes it a little easier to read. So we'll say cout you failed. Okay. We'll just do end L. Let's run this program. Let's test it out, shall we? We're almost done with this episode. Enter your test score. Okay, say you got a 91%. 91.5%. You got an A. Okay. Awesome. I got an A. Congratulations, me. We'll say I got, let's say I got a 65%. Ah, I got a C. Well, bummer. Let's say I got less than 60. Let's say I'm really bad whatever subject it is and I got a 30%. It'll say you failed. And it works just like that. I hope I explained that correctly, or easy to understand way. But basically, you're just telling the computer to make decisions based off of whether it's less than equal to, or whether it's just true. And we learned that the and or the or, and we'll cover those more in the future to kind of learn it. But that's it for this episode, guys. Thank you for watching. Next episode, we're going to be covering cases, because they're really simple to if statements, but a little bit different. So I hope to see you then. Thanks for watching.